to another episode of the show. Today we have an exciting panel discussion to discuss some issues that matter to everyday Ontarians. Today we'll talk about climate change, housing affordability, childcare, and of course the COVID-19 pandemic. Joining me to discuss all of those important issues are Emilie Leneveu, the Ontario Liberal Party candidate in the Bay of Quinte, Dane Bland, Ontario Liberal Party nomination candidate in Peterborough, Kawratha, and Sumira Malik, the candidate in Mississauga Centre for the Ontario Liberal Party. So to start off, I'll ask the same question to all three of you. Why did you feel it was important to get involved? And Dane, if you want to go first.
Oh, okay, cool, thanks. For me, getting involved seemed like a natural extension of things that I was already doing in the community. I've been an advocate and an activist for really my entire professional life. I've worked for the last 10 years in the charitable sector, so in places like education, healthcare, arts and culture, human rights, and all of these things are things that are under the provincial jurisdiction. So I've seen firsthand how good provincial policy can make a significant difference in people's lives and how not so good provincial policy can make a significant negative difference in people's lives. And over the last three and a half years in connecting with people that I was working with in my professional life, I really noticed that a lot of people were having a harder time. And I thought if there's a way that I could step up, advocate, and help do a little bit better for these people, the people that I was sort of interacting with on an every single day basis, I thought, you know what, that's important, and I have something to bring to the table. So that's what initially spurred me to get involved. Wyatt?
All right, Emilie.
Yes, great question. I think from a young age, I always knew I wanted to get involved in politics. And when I recently started volunteering more actually on the federal level, I was lucky enough to participate in a week-long event with Daughters of the Vote in the House of Commons. And I sort of shadowed our member of Parliament, Neil Ellis. And at that time, I think it was back in 2019, I had sort of told myself I wanted to run in a municipal election. And then, of course, when things sort of started to shake up, if you will, in provincial politics about a year ago, I was in talks with different members of the Provincial Association as well. And just knowing that I wanted to make a difference and realizing that I had kind of plateaued in my advocacy, if you will, being on different municipal committees and wanting to do more, I decided it was kind of time to answer the call, if you will, and just jump into the ring provincially. And I'm really excited that I made that choice because it's been such a welcoming experience jumping in. I know Sumira and I have had different chats with different candidates and different chats even with different members of provincial parliament. So it's been so welcoming, and it's definitely been great to just jump into the ring.
Sumira?
Yeah, so great question. In 2018, I remember I was on my university campus and I walked into my research lab and my lab partner came in, and this is just when the Ford government came into power. And she told me that she won't be returning next semester because she has to go back to work and she has to collect enough money for her tuition. And, that was really a wake-up call for me, just seeing how poor decision-making impacts people in our age demographic. Another thing is I truly believe that our government is the representation of the people. And just as different ethnic minorities are important, I think different age demographics are important as well. I think youth representation is very important. We have a different perspective and take on things. And I thought it was time that there was like a catalyst in our community where someone would kind of step up and own up that challenge.
Okay, and so just for my listeners, which one of you here is actually the youngest one?
I think Emilie, and then me, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm younger by just a month or something, or a few days anyways.
How old are you both?
23. I'll be 24 on August 3rd.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think a year actually. I'm 25. Just
okay.
25, yeah.
I'm turning 28 quite literally tomorrow. So,
oh, wow.
We're recording this on June 15th, so my birthday's the 16th, so I'll be 28.
Yeah, I know. I watched the TVO Next Generation Candidates panel with Sam Oosterhoff, and Emilie was the youngest one there. And I think Steve Paikin might have pointed out that you were the youngest Ontario Liberal candidate, but my next question is, climate change is an issue that young people feel passionate about, and so what is the Ontario plan to tackle climate change? And Emilie, if you want to answer this question.
Yeah, so I think the most, I would say, perhaps exciting thing about the Liberal Party platform right now is the Take the Mic component. And we're actually doing a Take the Mic listening session, both with our co-chairs, so Kate Graham and Michael Cotto, and I believe Stephen Del Duca will be joining them as well. He normally does, and they really just stay and listen for as long as it takes, whether it's an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, and this one is on climate action. So we haven't built the official policy yet, I will say that, but we're listening as much as possible. But I know for myself, I'm just really passionate about advocating to bring back the environmental policies and the environmental programs that we lost, specifically ones provincially that gave back to communities, whether it have been individuals, households, or businesses that wanted to implement various electric vehicles or various electric technologies or eco-friendly technologies within their organizations. I know myself, for example, I was lucky enough to buy an electric vehicle when Kathleen Wynne was in power, and I received $11,000 back from the provincial government. And I definitely wouldn't have purchased an electric vehicle at such a young age if it weren't for that. So I think for myself anyways, I think it's time to champion that we bring back and we restore the programs that we've lost, everything from the green belts right down to electric vehicles. But the one thing I will say that we have promised or that we have championed for is the elimination of highways that are negating the environment or that are hurting our watersheds or green belts. So I know we definitely will not be building any highways. That money can be redirected towards education.
Okay, and Sumira, I know that one thing that the current government is against is the carbon tax. So again, I know the policy's not fully developed yet, but in regards to the carbon tax, what do you believe should be done in regards to that?
Okay, I think that because we're in a party platform process still, it's hard for me to say exactly what we're going to do. I do know that climate change is very important to us, and I know that Stephen has committed that as a leader, and us as candidates take it very seriously as well. So just like Emilie was saying, we've lost a lot of programs that were doing really, really well, and we're really focusing on advocating and restoring those. But we do have a Take the Mic session this week on climate change. So I know that after that session, they'll have more of a take on where they kind of want to go forward with that.
All right, and Dane, would you add anything on the climate change issue?
Yeah, in Peterborough, Kawratha, we are the home of Trent University and Fleming College, both of which are known as supremely green. Some people even call us hippies. I'm a Trent alum myself, so I wear it as a badge of honor. And environmental protectionism is really a core part of our community. Climate activists in Peterborough aren't just young people, which is really exciting. There are people of all ages, all the way through to, in talking and doing voter outreach, people who are in their 80s and 90s who care about protecting the green belt, who care about protecting provincially significant wetlands in our communities. And that's really cool and really exciting. And I think that stratifies age and party lines. And so, when it comes to the restoration of, so much of, I think, what the next government has to do is bring back programs that were working. And it's really unfortunate now that we're at a stage where so many of those have either been gutted or changed or eliminated, that our next provincial Liberal government is going to have to take a significant chunk of its legislative time simply just rebuilding back to where we started when we entered this in 2018. And that's really unfortunate because that's wasted time that could be spent doing other and more progressive things. And instead we've got to sort of revisit stuff that we thought was a bit of a given. So price on pollution, I personally stand for that, and that was something that the Wynne government put in place, and in a much more effective and efficient way than currently is existing, in the provincial climate. I'm really looking forward to seeing some of those things restored. And I know, after the session that Sumira and Emilie are referring to, we'll see a really great policy agenda that's going to come out of that, and I'm excited for that too.
Okay, and so the next issue I kind of want to address is just winnability, because, and I'll start with Sumira. So obviously, Sumira, you're in Mississauga Centre, and downtown Toronto generally seems to be kind of the Mississauga Centre seems to generally be kind of a liberal traditional area. Obviously, in 2018, some of the results landed in the PC and NDP column, but do you feel confident that your riding will go back to the Liberals in the next election?
Yes, I definitely feel confident. Just like you're saying, my riding traditionally has always been liberal, but I think the liberal government, was in power for about a decade and people were just looking for change. And that happens, but I think people kind of saw the negative impacts of that change or the consequences of wanting that change. So I do think when I'm making calls with people that they're kind of ready to just go back and trust the liberal government, and we're really working hard. And so I'm really hopeful, yeah, that it's going to be liberal.
All right, and Emily, in the last election, Todd Smith received 24,000 votes in your riding, which is a decently large amount. So how are you going to confront that large amount of votes and try and win over the Bay of Quinte voters?
Yes, I think it's time for change in our riding first and foremost. We not only is it time for a fresh perspective in terms of, I think, the youth lens and just innovating as much as possible on the provincial landscape, but I also think it's time for a change just when it comes to bringing that fresh perspective on projects that perhaps we're overlooking when we've worked on them for so long. I know Minister Smith has been in office, I believe, for 3 terms now, and I am excited to step up to the plate, and I hope that resonates with voters. I know Sumira and I have a little bit of a competition going on when it comes to voter contact. She, I think, was #1 for a while for a few weekends there, and then I tried to beat her and I only got, I think, second this time, but I think we did
Defeat me this time.
Yeah, so I got second and woohoo, she got third. So she was right on my tail, but we definitely are a little bit competitive as the younger candidates, if you will. But on that note, I hope that those calls do resonate with the voters. And I hope to make 25,000 calls, if not 50,000. I know over the weekend, my campaign manager and I made just under, I think, 900 calls, and we feel confident that we can hopefully talk to everyone in the riding, because I think that's all what it's about when you're going up against someone who's currently in office. It's about reassuring people and gaining that trust. And the only way that I want to go about that is actually having those conversations, hopefully with everyone. I don't know if I'll have enough time, but I'm really hoping I can say that I spoke literally to every voter. But that's sort of my strategy, if you will. And I think it's just about putting in the work.
Okay, and Dane, your riding's interesting because on the federal and provincial level, it's kind of one that oftentimes a key indicator is whichever party forms government generally takes the riding. So how do you feel that you'll be able to win over the voters of Peterborough, Kawratha?
Yeah, that's an interesting point you raise. The saying goes, as goes Peterborough, so goes Ontario, certainly. And so Peterborough is a really interesting bellwether riding. And it's an important riding because I think it represents the cross-section of what is the bulk of Ontario. Peterborough City makes up one part of the riding and a large population center in the riding, and it's a small city, but very much an urban center. And then Peterborough's Kawratha is a very large riding that has a ton of rural elements as well. And so it's a really interesting cross-section of the attitudes of Ontarians in general. One of the things that I'm really encouraged about is that a little bit of straw polling is showing that in spite of the fact that there isn't officially a candidate, it's an empty chair, the Ontario Liberal Party is polling either on par or even slightly ahead of Mr. Smith. And I think that's a testament to look, you can say what you want about Mr. Smith as a person, but one of the things I've universally heard is people are sort of feeling a little left out. They have a hard time finding them. And I think that sort of speaks to exactly what Emilie and Sumira are doing, is just reaching out to voters and saying, hey, we're here and we're here for you. And I'm really excited if I was to be successful. I hope that I am better than an empty chair and we'll see a polling bump, and to start to continue the work that we're doing here of reaching out to voters and reassuring them that there is genuinely somebody at the provincial level that actually cares about them and the issues that they're experiencing day to day, because I think they're missing it a little bit at the moment.
Yeah, Dan, I'm actually in the riding just next door to you, so it's interesting.
Are you Northumberland, Peterborough South, or are you?
Yeah. No.
Oh, okay. Hey, you guys just got your candidate 2 weeks ago.
Bosnick.
Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah. So the next question that I have is the Ontario Liberal Party is offering $10 a day childcare. So why should voters put their trust in this plan, Sumira?
Well, it's fantastic. It's going to bring all these women into the workforce. It's an opportunity for parents to have affordable childcare. Like, I remember during my nomination, I was advocating for fair and safe childcare because I believe that a lot of parents or families were telling me that they're paying thousands of dollars in just childcare, and that's not sustainable for families, and it's not fair. You want your children to go somewhere that's safe, that's accessible. It's easy for both working parents to go out and work if they feel the need to do so. So I think it's a fantastic plan. I think it's going to help drive our economy, and it's going to help families in Ontario as well.
Okay, and my next question is, housing affordability is an important issue, especially for young people. So, because owning a home for some people is starting to become a dream rather than a reality, and we see housing prices going up a lot. And so, how would your party fix this? And Dane, you can respond if you like.
Yeah, I'll share. I'm house hunting at the moment in Peterborough, Kawratha. So I'm right in the thick of it on housing affordability. It's an issue that's touching me personally. And I spoke to my mom, who is a realtor. And I sort of said, I sent her a bunch of houses, and she said, no, you can't afford these because the list price is not real. These houses are going for $100,000 more than what they're listed for. And so every time it feels like, especially young people, but everybody makes a little bit of progress, it becomes that much more difficult or challenging to afford a house. And in Peterborough, Kawratha has a ton of seniors on fixed incomes. So the other thing that ballooning housing prices do to these people is it prices them out of their homes. These are people who've been in their homes for 40 or 50 years, their family homes. Some of them have built these homes, and these ballooning prices are forcing their property taxes up. And they're on fixed incomes. They can't afford these properties anymore. And these are their family homes. They're either being forced to downsize, to move away, or to struggle hand to mouth just to make ends meet. And so I really have been, one of the things I've spoken a lot about on housing affordability broadly in Peterborough is just the need to actually have a conversation about it at the provincial level, because it's not happening at the moment. And that goes all the way from average housing affordability all the way through to, I can speak to Peterborough only, but there are 1,500 people on the wait list, and Peterborough Kawratha is a community of maybe 85, 100,000 people. And there are 1,500 people right now on a wait list for an affordable house in Peterborough with really nowhere to go. And that's a big, big problem. That's a huge chunk of the adult population in the community. So definitely there needs to be something that's done here. And I think it starts by just opening up an actual conversation with municipalities, because there's not one happening at the moment.
Okay, and my final question that I have is, why should voters place their trust in you, and what would you achieve for the Bay of Quinte? And Emily, if you want to go first.
Yes, I am very passionate about the Bay of Quinte. I have gone to school here, just recently graduated. As a recent graduate, I think I have the energy and the fresh perspective to drive the Bay of Quinte as economically and environmentally as much as possible. And I think it's so important that we actually weave those two together, and we can not only be environmental champions, but economic champions as we slowly emerge through the pandemic, if I can even say that. So knock on wood, as we slowly get through this year. But I'm really excited to make, again, as many conversations with voters as possible. And I'm always happy to talk to anyone. So please feel free to reach out at any time. And I'm excited for the next, I think, 350 something days.
All right, and Dane, why should the people put the people of Peterborough Kawratha put their trust in you?
Well, they've got to do it twice still. Yeah. They have to vote for me to be the nominee, and then they've got to vote for me to be the to actually become the MPP. So I've got ways to go. But I think one of the things that, I'm sitting here, I've got boundless energy and a real desire to affect change. And look, I think as Emilie and Sumira have clearly shown and displayed, there is no age limit on leadership, and there's no age limit on taking the reins and making a difference and making a change. And I really want the opportunity to do that, because I think change doesn't just start by what you're going to do, but also how you're going to do it. And I think having a really diverse and exciting slate of younger candidates like me, and like many other people who are putting their hats in the ring for the Ontario Liberal Party, I think that that's a really brilliant way to start to do the change that we actually need to see in our province. So I'm excited for the opportunity to try.
Okay, and just what's your nomination race looking like, Dan? How many other nomination candidates are there?
Yeah, sure. So there's myself and one other person named Greg, and Greg's a really fantastic candidate as well. I've joked a little bit because there, I think there's two really good candidates in the race that for some voters, it might be the difference between picking between gray and slightly darker gray when you've got two really good candidates in a nomination race. And I think at the end of the day, it's a gut check for voters about the kind of representation that they want at the provincial table. And I really do. I hope that they pick me, and we run a really fantastic campaign. And, if the election were called tomorrow, it would be a complete coin toss, I think, Wyatt. So your guess is as good as mine.
Okay, and Sumira, why should the voters of Mississauga Centre put their trust in you?
Because I know we can do better. I've seen the impact of poor policy within the community, and I know that I'm a great advocate for mental health and education. And with being a youth, bringing in that youth perspective, I think could be great for Mississauga Centre. I think it's what they need, and I think it's what they deserve. And I'm a great advocate. I've been working in the community since I was really young. I started volunteering when I was just 14 years old. So I'm very familiar with the work within the community as well. And I know that instead of bringing Queen's Park to Mississauga Centre, we can take Mississauga Centre to Queen's Park.
All right, well, thanks. Thanks again, Sumira, and thanks, Emilie and Dane, as well.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
No problem.